G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today we're going to take a little stroll down memory lane. We have the 3rd edition rulebook, the 3rd edition Chaos Space Marines Codex, the 3.5 Codex, my love, and oh, precious. We also have the Eye of Terror, which is, pretty good book. Chaos Space Marines 4th and 5th, and Chaos Demons, which is, so-so. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're going to start with the 3rd edition rulebook because, well, this is simplicity personified. People will still argue with me to this day that this was a much harder edition to learn than the current editions, and I will probably die with many spears in me on the hill of, actually, it's ridiculously easy as an edition to learn and memorize. And in fact, prior to the codexes, every faction had its rules in the basic rulebook here. This was the last time they actually did all that. So you could play an entire faction straight out of the gate just with this book. So I guess we should, probably talk about that. So let's get in close and actually have a look at Chaos Space Marines as released in the original rulebook. So very, very limited war gear in here. Very minimal on the points front. You see a lot of odd numbers like 2 and 3 points that you just don't see these days. We have a summary, which is, these are the units, these are the weapon stats. A couple of special rules along the way. Now, this is prior to universal special rules, although in a way you could argue independent character always was a universal special rule. But it's pretty lovely just seeing this all. There were independent greater demons for all of the gods in here. There were command squads, Chaos Space Marine veterans. You had obviously the warriors of the different gods, so Berserkers, Plague Marines, Thousand Suns, Noise Marines. They're all in here in some capacity. They just worked a little bit differently back then. We also have Dreadnoughts, Predators, just the usual. I mean, not much has changed really, and really not a lot has actually been added to the Chaos lineup over the years when you look at where the basic Chaos Codex is now compared to the codexes back from this time period. Really, it's Demon Engines and perhaps Warp Talons and, geez, what else? Mutilators? The ones that come to mind, maybe Possessed. These are all units that came along later, and they weren't in the original books, obviously. But anyway, so the core framework is laid in that 3rd edition rulebook. Then we get Chaos Space Marines. This was a pretty iconic codex to look at. In fact, the camera thought that was a real human face and would autofocus the face on the front of the codex, which is neat. So inside we get some color pictures. Now, the codex is back from this day and age. They had really nice cover art, but they didn't use a lot of color inside them. Just printing color was... it wasn't really a thing until I think about 6th edition, where they really started to put color throughout the entire book. You would have color in the art sections showing you the lists, and they might use it in splashes on the occasional page, but it was mostly printed in black and white. And you can see straight away, this is the 3rd edition book, and how much war gear has been added to the Chaos Armory. And, I've got to say, it's kind of impressive, because even with 3rd edition, which is sort of a forgotten Chaos book, they managed to have enough unique war gear and special rules to make each individual faction within the Chaos Space Marines feel unique. Yep, they had Khorne Berserkers, they had special rules in here, Plague Marines, Thousand Suns, again, all of the stuff you would expect on a Sesame Seed, but there was Demonic Beasts, Lesser Demons, Chaos Raptors, Obliterators. This is also the time period where they used a lot of 0 to 1. So you would have seen there, Obliterators was 0 to 1. We get, of course, to Chaos War Gear. We get a lovely couple of page spread talking about it, and, I mean, one of the big things you notice in here is look at the artwork. This is just gorgeous artwork. You don't get artwork like this these days. I mean, there's motherfucking Doom Rider on the bottom left there. Cypher, Araman, Abaddon. This is the pinnacle, probably, of style when it came to art. There's a lot of really beautiful stuff in the next codex, but the stuff in here is just iconic when you think of Chaos. And I'm all for it. And of course, they finish out with some special rules and special war gear towards the back of the book. And then we'll even get a few pictures. This is back in the day when they would show you, here is a basic starting army, and here's a bit of a snapshot of the faction as a whole, because again, they didn't give you a lot of images in these books because colour printing was expensive back in the late 1990s. That Demon Prince, by the way, the first metal Demon Prince I ever bought for Chaos. And yeah, they had snapshots of the battlefields, the really simple tables they had back then, a bit of an oversight of the different factions that you might be able to have, little painting tutorials along the way, which, rudimentary compared to today, but again, looking at the resources they had to work with, I mean, all of these images you couldn't just, scan these back in those days and Photoshop them. The technology hadn't been invented yet. So someone had to take all of these pictures on film camera, and then they had to be painstakingly rotoscoped in order to do this. So these books were, they were pricey. They were a bit of a work of art back in the day. A bit of a work of love, even, one might say. So that was Chaos Space Marines in 3rd edition. And then, well, let's see. We get this. Codex Chaos Space Marines 3.5. The Holy Grail. So 3.5 is the best codex Games Workshop ever wrote, hands down. Some will argue the point, but look at it. It's gorgeous to see throughout. And you don't get artwork like this anymore. This is just random Chaos Space Marines fighting Raven Guard. You won't get that now. You open a modern codex, you're just going to get pictures of exactly the models they sell on the box. A little bit of BFG action. They're going to put this imagery in there that is only models you can purchase. In here, Adrian Smith in this beautiful artwork, he would just lay out like Abaddon's Chosen. These guys are there to inspire you with what you might do. And you have special rules. You have awesome artwork, and look at the size of this armory here. Look how much gear you can buy back in this edition. So where you see veteran skills there, that is the dawn of the universal special rule. So there's only a few of them. Counterattack, Furious Charge, Infiltrate, Move Through Cover, Siege Specialist, Night Vision, Skilled Riders, Tank Hunters. That's it. So you compare that to the previous edition, it's a huge upgrade. So anyway, this is how the pages are laid out. They tell you exactly what the war gear does. Nice and simple, really basic. It also gives you additional information here on the different items, a bit of a brief description of what it should look like, because you had to model this or convert it in some way in those days. All very lovely stuff. We even have a page here of vehicle-specific upgrades that, disappeared going into further codexes. I think about the only thing that last was Dirgecaster, maybe. I mean, look at this art. So iconic. Not as good as 3rd edition, though. This is more grim-industrial, and it's technically better, but it's, I don't know, there's something about it. Anyway, getting into the rules, Chaos Lord, Sorcerer, Greater Demons, your Chosen, and you had all different kinds. Chosen Terminators, the champions for them, Possessed, Obliterators, just magnific. And the problem with this codex was it came while 3rd edition was still a thing. Khorne Berserkers, Slaanesh Noise Marines, Plague Marines, Downstairs. These were all an upgrade to your basic Chaos Space Marines. So when you picked that legion, your Chaos Space Marines became Berserkers, Noise Marines, Plague Marines, and it gave them rules to turn them into that. That was one of the best things this codex did. So it was really hard because this came at a time when those 3rd edition books are out there with 10 items of war gear, and this thing drops with 100 items of war gear. It's not that many, but you know what I mean. And all of these different vehicles and units and upgrades and legion specializations, and all the special 4th edition chapter rules, 4th edition Tyranids Guard, all of this stuff hadn't come yet. And there were rules, by the way, for how you would build each faction, what units you can't take, which is again a neat little touch. And it's condensing. Every legion has a whole page entry to them devoted just to their rules. They can't even bother themselves to do that these days for Chaos Space Marines. They want to pretend that all Space Marines in Chaos are just renegade chapters. Just, oh yeah, you're loyalist Space Marines, but worse in every conceivable way, because you're the bad guy and you can't be good. at your jobs. It's just pathetic what current Games Workshop is compared to this. So you get those nice full-page spreads that added a ton of character and rules to playing those forces. I did it in a page. Then we get to the Books of the Gods at the back here. So you get 2 pages of rules, generally, 3 in the case of Thousand Suns, for just playing the Legion, and a page for the special character of that Legion. And this allowed you to create so much customization. There's no need for a separate fucking Death Guard codex here. No need for a Slaanesh codex. No, 2 pages. You could summarize it. And believe me, if you played games in that time period, it felt like you were playing against World Eaters if you played against a World Eaters army. The rules worked super well. But again, it felt very overpowered against its contemporaries on release. Now, you give it 3 years, 2-3 years into 4th edition, does not feel overpowered at all. It feels very run-of-the-mill compared to other 4th edition books. But this is the problem. Other 4th edition books had all of this time up their sleeve to rise to the occasion, rise to the power level that had been set by this particular codex. One of the other things I love is, and I had to pause the video here, so if you look at this shot, that is the summary. Every single thing in this book is summarized in that page. All your units, weapons, and even the special rules are broken down to 1-sentence summaries. How easy is that? Nothing does that these days. You know, they're trying to do something like that with 9th and 10th edition 40k, but it's just, they fail at the simplicity. We also have quarter page devoted to the mortal followers, a quarter page devoted to the demonic followers of every single legion, which is fantastic. A quarter page spread for Iron Warriors. Do you see that in the current codexes? No, because they don't care. This is the only book that understood that people liked playing Chaos Legions. And of course, you've got beautiful siege scenes like this here. This is a diorama that, you know, it's crude by today's standards, but it's pretty nice. Also had all this showcase at the back. There was some really interesting miniatures in here, and it really showed off the style at the time that you would see at like Golden Demons, Slayer Sword events. And just, what a majestic book. I love this book from the bottom of my heart. Anyway, Eye of Terror. Now, Eye of Terror, we've spoken about on this channel before. 6 years ago when we did the first Nostalgia Trip episode. I think this is only like the 4th or 5th episode we're doing, so it's not a series that we do an awful lot of, but I think I'll do something special for 3.5, because it is 20 years old this year. Anyway, this book is a lot of fun. It's really just a campaign supplement, but it was a good price. It was cheap at the time. It was like $20, and it gave you 13th Company Space Wolves, Cadians as their own faction, because they were separate to regular Imperial Guard, and this gorgeous Lost in the Damned list, as well as Craftworld Ulthwé. And again, the artwork in here. You don't see artwork like this these days for Renegade Militia and cults, and when you do see it, like, they like to pretend there's no traitor guard or anything like that in there, and yet look at this image. Those are proper skilled trained guardsmen, Chaos Space Marines flying alongside each other, as well as, you know, idiot militias. Like, you had a bit of everything, and just the artwork in here. It's got those little touches that just, it's a good book. It's a fun book. You don't need it, but it's a great companion piece to 3.5. Then we get to these stinkers, and well, stinkers is probably a little bit strong of a term, because the Chaos Demons book, it's passable, I guess. I mean, so, okay, here's the thing, right? They took these 2 books and they broke up 3.5, which is the perfect book, into these 2 books. And yeah, look at this. That 4th edition book is thicker. I know it's hard to see with the camera, but it's thicker than 3.5. And so's the Chaos Demons book. So you end up breaking 3.5 into 2 books which are thicker, and you think that means there's more content, right? No, wrong. There is not more content. A very weak argument can be made for Demons having more content. I mean, very tenuous and weak. Because what Demons did to pad itself out was it didn't really add many units. What it gave us was special characters. So it gave us special characters: the Mask, Epidemius, Skulltaker, the twins, the Zinch twins, the Blue Horrors, and the Deceiver, or whatever it is, that the horror in a cloak, and it gave us the 3 greater demons, but it didn't give us a Keeper of Secrets for some reason. But that's all it did. It just added special characters. All of the units in there, like Demonettes and Blood Crushers, all that, Screamers, they all existed already. They were in the previous codex. So nothing was actually gained in this book, realistically, from that standpoint, apart from the demon summoning mechanic change. Then we get to this stinker of a turd of a book, one of the worst books ever written by Games Workshop. Again, fight me on it, I dare you. It may have been a memo from up high to write an awful book, and that's fine. But they couldn't stick with this pattern throughout the edition. This is not what other 5th edition books look like. And this was the release at the end of 4th. So 3.5 heralded 4th edition, well, this book heralded 5th edition. And I mean, just look at the difference here. Look at this Horus Heresy. It's like in big text mode when Grandpa gets a new phone and he needs to change the font size on it so he can read it. Look at the difference between 3.5's Horus Heresy section and how it's laid out. And then compare this wall of text and in-depth story with like Dreadclaws crashing in the background. Yeah, take that now and then compare it to this. Just a flat white page in big font, which basically just recovers the same fluff out of 3.5. Then I got to this picture and I was like, hang on a minute, I recognise that picture, because it's been a long time since I read these books. So I start flicking through, 3.5 book, and I'm going to do this a couple more times before this video ends. I do apologise, but I'm flicking through here and I'm looking for it. I'm sure that is just another reused artwork, because, well, they put so little effort into 5th edition's codex, they just upcycled all their existing artwork from other books, and here you go. So 3.5, you have this awesome looking Chaos Lord. Again, this is Adrian Smith at his finest. Oh man, I love his Warhammer art is what speaks to me. Some people love Blanche's work. I love Adrian Smith's work. I think that's why I loved Chronicles of Hate so much. But yeah, that's the exact same artwork, and there's a lot of repetition throughout this book of old artwork because it's just such a lazy addition. They just reuse imagery. That's a reused image. All those little pictures down the bottom, though, those are new. Those coloured little paint guides or whatever to those different legions. Funny enough, no word bearers in there. So take that how you will. But see this artificial thickness? By giving a page to every single unit, it made the book artificially thicker. And get this, right? Demons. So demons got ripped out of this book and had their own codex come later. So you end up with just this. Greater demon, lesser demon. Just a flat stat line for both units. Nothing to do with God specific or anything like that. So I guess they're greater demons of Undivided or something. If you go back and you take something like the 3rd edition Codex Chaos Space Marines, which everyone knows is bare bones, I showed it to you before. Look at that, you have special rules for all of the lesser demons, even if they share one stat line as demons. Okay, what about the greater demons? Yeah, greater demons fitted onto one page. All 4 greater demons. Like, I know they wanted to shill demons being their own codex, but they never, ever should have done it. They never should have split them apart. And this gets even worse, right? Well, we take 3.5 here, and again, we'll flick through this book and we'll go, oh, where's the lesser demons, the greater demons? And again, it's been a long time since I read these books, so I have to sort of search around for a little bit to find it. And I thought, no, I'll leave it in the video because I want people to see how long it takes to look something up in 3.5. This amazing, gigantic book that lasts forever. And it doesn't take long. And look at that. Demon packs. There you go. Fits all onto a half a page. So why is it that they couldn't fit these rules for all these specialist units in here? Well, they just couldn't because they wanted to shield demons 5th. So they ripped out demons as a mechanic, essentially, from Chaos in favour of what this book became. Then we get to the art section. Now, the art section 3.5, remember I said, devotes a quarter page to every single faction and to each god's demons. Look in here. This is the Night Lord section. It's a Night Lord, a single model with the bat's ears, and a single raptor who you can only tell is a Night Lord because you're told it's a Night Lord. And if I go into 3.5 and I flick through and I've got my little quarter page entries, here you go, Night Lords get a quarter of a page. Games Workshop still had these models. They didn't vanish. They just didn't choose to use any of this artwork. So they upcycle other artwork but didn't reuse any of those photos. So you get just a single miniature to represent a faction. Good luck to you, right? Who cares about legions? I mean, up here, Plague Marines. 5 Plague Marines. There you go. 2 Noise Marines. These are the things that they use to represent gods. That's how little they cared. Because in this book, they just want you to play Black Legion. They just want you to play Chaos Space Marines, Black Legion, and use Thousand Suns as an extra unit in them. Don't play Thousand Suns as a unique force. How dare you? Right? Look at War Gear in here. Again, just like with the Horus Heresy up the front of this book, they just up the size of the font, flat, boring white page, a few scribbles they borrowed from elsewhere, and then compare it to 3.5 as description of the weapons and the weapons rules. It's so pathetic and middling in comparison. And then, of course, it's got your stat lines down the back of the book here, and, it's just something pathetic about looking through it. I mean, I like the hand-drawn sketches of the weapons. We've seen those a lot. They were in the 3rd edition basic rulebook. We got quite a lot of those. And you get to the end of this just turd of a book, which caused me untold grief for many years, after some more upcycled art. And we got to this. And I mean, just look at this. That is the summary of this book. No special special rules or anything like that in this summary. Right? It just tells you who it was written by and gives you the troops and the ranged weapons. And here we have 3.5. Look how many units in there. All the special rules and items of war gear in there. All the vehicles, everything, including all the types of demons. So 3.5, a skinnier book, packs in as much content as Chaos Space Marines 5th fucking edition. What a turd. What a stinker of a book. Despise it. So, yeah, if you have the choice between the two, Codex Chaos Space Marines 3.5. This book is lovely. It feels nice. It's precious. This book, though, total dog shit. You know what? You know what's a funny thing about this, right? I would even take something like 3rd edition Chaos over 5th edition Chaos. I think it would play better in 5th edition than the actual 5th edition book did. Because at least it had demons, And it's funny because during the recording of this, I was like, this is probably a good time to do an outro. I've spoken about the rise and fall of Chaos Space Marines and how we had such an awesome book and gave you a glimpse of it. And I thought, no, stop. We need to go one step further here. We need to look at Space Marines. Now, why did I want to look at Space Marines? Well, you saw what Chaos Space Marines looked like in the basic rulebook. What did Space Marines look like in there? Well, they looked like this. Not that much bigger. They don't really have much additional war gear. They've got a couple extra characters, but, Chaos had Demon Princes, and Chaos had Greater Demons. The Marines didn't have those, but Marines have Scout Squads, and they've got Razorbacks, and they've got Assault Terminators, which is definitely something Chaos doesn't have, and Land Speeders, and Attack Bikes, and, okay, these are all things that Chaos doesn't have, and Whirlwinds, Vindicators, and... But what happens, right? This is my closing thought for you. What did Marines have ripped out of them? Because Chaos lost demons. They were all ripped out of them. Did Marines lose their Vindicators? Did they lose their Whirlwinds, their Scouts, their Attack Bikes, their Land Speeders? They get siphoned off into Codex Reconnaissance? No, they fucking didn't. They've kept all of their shit since the dawn of time in this game, and yet, for some reason, Chaos Space Marines continuously have to have their stuff taken away, split off into supplements, or erased. And I'm just sick of it. Anyway, that's it for me. Mac at the Outer Circle. See you on the next one.